Hello, and welcome to Positive Fandom. My name is and today we have Catherine Cooke with us going over the new series, The Book of Boba Fett. How are you today, Catherine?
Good.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. So finally, we've been waiting so long for this first episode of The Book of Boba Fett. Um, it's episode 1, Stranger in a Strange Land. And it seems like in this episode, we're seeing what I would consider a reinvention of Boba Fett. What do you think?
Yeah, kind of.
Well, he's going, we've always known Boba Fett to be a bounty hunter, and we've actually seen him do quite a lot since, in the last series with The Mandalorian, where he clearly, I don't think he was bounty hunting at that time, but he seemed to kind of trying to get his life in order or things in order. And I think one of the turning points, in addition to helping out Fennec Shand, by sort of rescuing her. And I'm assuming it was him who rescued her and helped her kind of get physically repaired. We're also seeing that it was incredibly important for him to get his armor back, because it seems like without his armor, Boba Fett just isn't himself. What do you think?
Yeah, he definitely is not himself without the armor, and even a bit with the armor in the timeline that takes place in the present. He's very off in this episode.
Yeah, he certainly is. I mean, if it was a normal person, I would say, they'd be going through a midlife crisis. But it seems like Boba Fett, he keeps saying things that seem contrary to what we know about him. For example, in the Mandalorian series, he said that he's not a Mandalorian. But having his ancestry as a Mandalorian was very important to him, especially when we saw the armor. So clearly there's some pieces of it that he takes, that he absorbs, that are important to him, in his identity. And then at other times, in this particular episode, and of course we saw it in the trailers where he said that he's going to rule with respect, but he's a crime lord. So, I think it's a very interesting way. He's kind of redefining, who he is, what he's doing. And he is kind of a dynamic character in that sense. And I'm curious as to what, his final pathway is going to be, so to speak, in the series. But we start off with him, and it's this very unusual scene, although we've seen it in other films, these Bacta tanks, and I kind of want to introduce this in the sense of, it's like, well, what do you dream when you're in a Bacta tank? He's obviously sleeping or resting, maybe you're sedated, you're asleep. And, all those things that when we go to sleep, we dream about, that come up in our mind or are concerns for us, probably come up in Boba Fett's mind too. And I think that that's what they were going for when we got to see some things that we've been waiting for a long time, answers to questions that we've been waiting for a long time. So what did you think about the Sarlacc pit scene that we get to see in one of his flashback scenes, Catherine?
I loved the start of it. I just wish it went on a lot longer, because it felt like just as he's beginning to, like, you really want to feel the victory of climbing out from the clutches of death, And I thought it was interesting that the only other person you see in there is a stormtrooper. Must have found his way in there somehow, because there was no stormtrooper at the battle of the in Return of the Jedi at the Sarlacc pit. So I'm like, okay, there's stormtroopers there, and you're seeing how the acid kind of eats into him, and the guy looks pretty dead. And he has an air hose, which is interesting, because we haven't seen those on the stormtroopers before, but it makes sense that they have them. And I take it probably hasn't been very long, because, Boba Fett's still alive. Because there's always been the question fans have had, is like, does Sarlacc keep you alive while they're eating you over 1,000 years? Are you dead? Nobody really knows. And so I liked it when he starts really ripping his way through it. But I wasn't crazy about him, like, punching his fist through the sand. It seemed like the logical way out would be the way you came in, like crawling out through the... Because you know how the Sarlacc has those big teeth coming out, like grabbing onto those and pulling yourself out with the... I thought that would have looked like a lot cooler. And just to really, like, earn the victory, Like, this just felt like, oh, cool, we're just getting started, and oh, he's already out. It's a little bit of a letdown.
Well, I have to agree with you on the length of the episode. I felt like, maybe we needed about an hour and a half just to kind of give us a bearing of what's happened and, where he's at right now. And, while it was very satisfying to see that Sarlacc pit part part, and it looked very kind of dank and dark, and it had that green kind of slime in it. And, it really looked like it might have been very difficult for anybody on Earth to get out of that pit. He manages to know what to do, to just kind of, even, I guess maybe he really got hurt. And I kind of wonder how long he was in there, because I'm sure you noticed this when he does crawl out of the pit after, I don't know, they seem to imply he used his flamethrower for part of it, but I'm guessing maybe he used some of the strength functions inside of some of his armor to push through or to burrow a hole. Maybe he has another weapon we don't even know about. But the point that I'm making is that when he climbs out of that Sarlacc pit, we can kind of see, shortly after, or let's say a few flashbacks later, that the barge is still kind of steaming. And I'm wondering, gee, I thought he would have been in there like maybe a few weeks or something, I mean, I don't know how long. I wondered how long it was that he actually was in the Sarlacc pit.
I wouldn't think it would have been a few weeks, or you wouldn't have had the energy to crawl out of there. Like I figured it might have been a few days, because that wreckage would keep smoldering for about that long or so. And so, yeah, I figured it would be a few days at most, because you even see when he first kind of wakes up, it's like he was almost unconscious or something, and he's immediately struggling to get free of it. And at first, it didn't seem like he was having much of a problem strength-wise. It was just getting his bearings and figuring out what he needed to do. But once he did, he was kind of just going at it, and it looked like it was going to be a long way. So once he finally did get out, you could see that it's like really was an exhausting effort, because he just collapses right there on the sand, practically passes out.
He really does. And he also looks physically different. I mean, we don't see his face right away because he has his armor on, he has his helmet on. But you're right, you can almost sense the physical fatigue and exhaustion he has. And the armor looks like it a little battered. I mean, it wasn't always perfect looking, but now it felt like, between whatever he had, the jumpsuit underneath the armor, or any other exposed parts that didn't have armor on them, might have had, some sort of like acid on them, or something that's kind of done some kind of damage, this weather damage on him. And so, he looks physically different on the outside, even with the armor on, even with the jumpsuit on. And then, of course, at some point when we notice that the Jawas, and I have to say, Catherine, I've never seen Jawa do this before. So, and it's okay. Like, I always assumed that the Jawas would take something from someone who was deceased and not from someone who was alive. In other words, because they've picked up people like in the middle of the desert, and they haven't like taken a back of a weapon and headbutted them with it or anything. So
well,
I think
they thought he was dead when they first found him, because they started to just taking the armor off, and then it kind of took them by surprise when they saw that he was alive, and it's like, uh-oh, what do we do? Because they'll see them were thieves, so they're like, oh, okay, you just knock them out and keep going. And of course the Jawas are going to find the smoldering wreckage and pick it to pieces.
And of course, what you're saying makes sense. Maybe they almost had to knock him out, because if he came to, and like he could really hurt, they know that he could really hurt them being a Mandalorian. So they're like, we better, oh my God, hurry, what do we do? Quick, bam, okay, we averted that, that sudden catastrophe. But it is very funny to see them, how artfully and skillfully they kind of just take off his armor. And then that's when you see how hurt Boba Fett really is. And we're assuming that he didn't have sort of like all that scarage on his face and stuff. I mean, is that fair enough to say, Catherine?
Oh, I think he might have gotten that before, because he had that on. He had his armor on the whole time when he was in the Sarlacc pit, but we haven't seen him, in the years since. So he might have gotten those over the years as well. And he just, in general, might have just been more injured or something. Because I'm not sure, because his armor looked like it was pretty intact when he crawled out. Like, it didn't have like the acidic holes in it like the stormtroopers did. It looked kind of fine, and I'm like, unless some of it kind of seeped under the mask and maybe seeped in at the edges or something, it did something to his skin. But yeah, it looks like, and just from being left in the desert out there like that, just gonna exacerbate the problem, because he looks pretty worse for wear.
Yeah, exactly. And so of course that makes me wonder, and it is a question that that I do want to ask your opinion on. And I've kind of tried to think about this, the scene, as we said already, the scene or the episode opens with Boba being in this Bacta tank. Is how, like, for example, let's say he's, uses the Bacta tank when he gets hurt, or let's say, we see people in the Star Wars universe use Bacta tanks when they have a serious injury or whatever, and then they're in it. But I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm kind of looking at it, wondering if he has to have a Bacta tank in his quarters. Is Boba Fett unwell in some way? In other words, does he have to normally go in the Bacta tank to recover, let's say, on a normal basis? What are your thoughts? Do you think he's got some injuries that he's still...
Maybe not, since maybe after escaping the Sarlacc he does, because that's probably got a bunch of other weirdo issues, but maybe not beforehand, other than this, because he seemed pretty I didn't get the sense that he was jumping in and out of Bacta tanks all the time. And the other, even when you read the new canon comics, it's not like he's taking time to go off to do a Bacta tank here or there. And in the present timeline, it makes sense because it's after he's escaped the Sarlacc, and he's a lot older now. So getting in those types of fights and putting that type of strain on his body with the acrobatics we've seen him doing is going to be a lot harder on him. So it's like, unlike us, who would have to go home and just relax for a few weeks, he gets to cheat and get into the Bacta tank.
Well, I mean, they did a good job of kind of showing him in the tank. And, fortunately, Tamora Morrison is incredibly recognizable now. And, as we said before, he's had such an impact on Star Wars, being a clone, being the face of all the clones in the clone army, and then also being Jango and Boba. So, seeing him now as an older man, an older version of Boba Fett, it's incredibly satisfying to see this. He's also kind of like, physically, when you look at his body, like as he was getting out of the Bacta tank, he looked like he was in okay physical condition. He, like he's burly, he doesn't look like he's sick necessarily. So I had wondered about why would he be in the Bacta tank, and Fennec going to wake him up, so perhaps they had an excursion before or something. But I wondered if he was unwell and that was, the tank was there just because he has to use that. But
maybe it's just, I'm guessing it just might be after effects of the Sarlacc. Like he just needs that for a bit. But because again, I don't think he was climbing into Bacta tanks in the 5 years that he was. I mean, I assume he was on Tatooine the whole 5 years, because I like the implication of this show that it's going to be a parallel storyline for all 7 episodes. Like we're going to see what he was doing the whole 5 years, and then we're going to follow the present storyline as well. So I'm guessing that all of the weathered beatings and everything that he's going to take over the next 5 years is going to be probably a reason why he's using the Bacta tank as often as he is in the present timeline of the show.
And then, of course, there's that satisfying scene where we see, there. So this particular episode has flashbacks, and I'm assuming, like what you just said, we're going to see flashbacks. We're going to see the series progress as the story progresses for Boba and for Fennec. And we also get to see like a very satisfying moment where he gets dressed, or these droids are dressing him in his armor, and that is also very satisfying to see. It feels very ceremonial, doesn't it? The way that they did it.
Yeah, because he's the new boss, so they're like treating him, and I like that these droids are also holdovers from Jabba. Like they even have the one from the Jabba's droid torture chambers even there, and being like his own major domo when people are coming in to pay him tribute. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, there's a lot in this episode, I have to say, that really grabs your attention. And so, while he's in this Bacta tank, he's having these flashbacks and dreams, and we're seeing, what I think is, Boba Fett kind of like unfiltered. This is exactly what happened to him from his point of view. There is no, he's not holding anything back because it's a dream, and we're kind of like getting a much clearer picture than if someone were kind of watching it from the outside. This is through Boba's own eyes. And, we get some, tear-jerking flashbacks where, right when his father was killed, and also, as we already said, the Sarlacc pit. And then, fortunately for him, and I'm saying fortunately because, I don't know who else would be in the desert, other than the Jawas, because they already kind of like took his armor, but they didn't necessarily want to grab him. The Tuskens come along. And, this is really, I think, we've got a hint of Tusken culture or a small piece of Tusken culture in the Mandalorian series. And even in the original series where we got to see who the Tusken Raiders were, and in the prequels, how they live. This particular series is taking it a bit further, isn't it?
Yeah, this is clearly a different tribe of Tuscans, the way they dress, the colors are very different, even the shape of some of their masks are a bit different, and how they just find him, and they're trying to see if he's alive, and they're like poking him with sticks, and then when they can tell he's alive, they give him like squeeze this worm to give him some juice, just to give him just enough to barely live, and then they tie him up and start dragging him by a bantha across the desert, and it's like, okay, let's see where we're going with this.
Yeah, like as if he wasn't exhausted already. It's like, let's make him walk across the desert bound to a bantha, and eventually is just kind of like pulling him, dragging him along, and it's definitely something very interesting to see in that regard, because I'm like, does Boba ever get a break? Like, this poor guy has to go through this, and at some point he gets kind of tied to a stake, and he's being held by the Tuscans, and so obviously we knew this was going to happen, because we've seen Tuscan Raiders hold people prisoners, just like Anakin's mother was held prisoner, and other people. But we have to wonder what's going to happen, because in the previous series in The Mandalorian, we saw the Tuscan Raiders kind of cooperating with the settlers, because the Tuscan Raiders are sort of like the native Tatooine people, so to speak, and then seeing them cooperate with settlers. Now I'm almost wondering what the Tuscan Raiders are going to do with him. And we see them, he's guarded by a massive, and that's typical what we would see with them, and there's a Rodian there, and Boba's kind of like in a position where he just has to break free of these bonds, and we're all kind of expecting that. Nobody is watching the scene expecting that Boba will not break free, correct?
Right.
So it's not a surprise that that he does break free, and so before we get to the scene of what happens to the continuation of him, as we've seen, and it was quite a lot in that first few minutes, from him in the back to tank to where Fennec Shand goes and wakes him up. She informs him, she says, okay, everybody's here to pay their respects to you. They have tributes. And then of course there's the armor scene. And then we get to see Boba in the throne room, on the throne with Fennec by his side. And what we're witnessing is clearly, now that everyone, I guess, has accepted that Boba is now in charge, they're coming to pay respects and tributes to Boba, since he is now the ruler. And, it's like very funny how they call him that Daimo, title. But clearly the people who are coming to pay respects don't all have the same sentiments towards Boba being the new leader.
Yeah, like they bring in the two Gomorians, and they would rather be loyal to their previous bosses, but because Boba says, just let him go. And they're so surprised by that they just defect and decide to serve him. And yet the torture droid was like, but sir, I'm sure their screams and their dungeons will bring you all sorts of satisfaction and strike fear into the heart of your enemies. He's like, nah, just let him go. And that was kind of, it's like, okay, that was kind of funny. And then when the Major Domo comes in from Mos Espa, is very bad casting. I thought it kind of took me out of it. Something about this character just seemed off. I can't really put my finger on what it was, but it didn't feel Star Warsy. Something was weird about this guy, and he's asking for greeting Boba Fett, and kissing up to him, and then offering about the tribute, and Boba's like, what? And Fennec's like, I think he's asking you to pay him tribute. And he's like, he's like, yeah, no, it's not gonna happen. And he's like, and the guy Major Domo's like, okay, just be aware, next time he might send a posse, and it won't be as friendly. Don't shoot the messenger type thing. And he just waltzes out and leaves. And I'm thinking, okay, Boba, you got to be smart about this. But he is not.
I almost wanted Boba to say, oh, he has no tribute, then let's have his head on a platter or something. Like, just kind of, a little, oh, I'm just, I have your head on a platter if I don't see a tribute here by, by tomorrow, or the first moon or whatever. But, something clever to kind of work around it. And, Fennec seems to, want to advise Boba in how to get along with these people. So what I'm kind of curious about, Catherine, is your take on the fact that Fennec seems to be very intuitive to how this particular planet or city functions and what people are comfortable with. Does Boba have trouble reading that from people, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's what I don't get. 'Cause from here on out, I think the whole episode falls off a cliff. Because it's like, dude, you've worked for Jabba plenty of times before. You've seen the types of people who come in here and how they behave, what they pay, what they respond to, and he's all about, oh, I want to pay with respect because we can make more money. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But this guy came in, and it's obvious that if the mayor sent his major domo, then he sent him because the major domo is expendable, and he's testing Boba to see if this guy's all that, if he's all cranked up, obviously. And Fennec Shand could see that too. She's like, no, he's really trying to piss you off and see if you're going to give him money. And he doesn't expect you to give him the money. He's just trying to test you and all that. And yet Boba doesn't seem to pick up on this, which is odd because Mos Espa isn't that far away from Mos Eisley. This is a community that Jabba probably dealt with a lot, that Boba would be familiar with. And his plan to just waltz into Mos Espa and go into the camp. Oh yeah, let's just go collect it's like, really? This is obviously a trap. It's like, you're not that stupid, Boba Fett, but apparently he is. And they just, they waltz into town, and you see there's a cameo from some actual robots from Galaxy's Edge that you see there, and a couple other neat little robots that they'd actually built and designed. It was kind of neat that you see, and it's interesting that this area of Mos Espa we haven't seen before, because it looks like it's in a canyon, and it has like this big spire in the middle. I'm like, oh, this kind of looks cool. And they're moving through, and the cantina looks pretty nice, because we haven't seen the Mos Espa cantina before. It's like really snazzy and all that. And he steps right in, and immediately somebody walks up. Is like, "Sir, may I take your helmet? I'll polish it for you." And he just gives him the helmet. I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, don't do that. This is they're trying to lure you in. What are you doing? And yet he just gives him the helmet. And Fennec Shand was smart enough to say no. She's, like you said, she is smarter. She picks up on this stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Here you go. And I'm like, is this like the aftermath of the Sarlacc, where it's just kind of messing with your brain or something? Because then, they walk in and they meet that Twi'lek woman, and they talk with her a bit. She's kind of neat. And then when he gets the helmet back and it's loaded with treasure, and I'm like, okay, I admit I'm surprised by that. But no, this is still a trap. This has got to be a trap. So when they walk outside, and they're just waltzing along, and Boba thinks he did a good job. Oh, the mayor didn't think I was going to have the balls to come here. It's like, really? And of course they get ambushed. And you have a fight scene, which looked a little clunky compared to the ones we saw in that big scene in the tragedy in season 2, which was really wicked, and the choreography wasn't really quite there. There was a lot of fast cutting, kind of trying to cut around it. The Gomorians have to show up and save them. It shows that Boba really hasn't regained his strength yet. And he has to remind Fennec Shand to keep one of the people she's chasing alive, so that way they have somebody to interrogate. So she takes off chasing them on the rooftops with like a little fun rooftop chase. And she ends up getting one of them after knocking another guy off the roof, which was kind of cool. But the Gomorians literally have to drag Boba out of there because he was not going to make it. And I can't fathom why Boba would be that stupid to fall for this. Like, even Fennec knew this from the moment the guy asked for the money, and it's like, dude, this is a trap. What are you doing? So,
and then if he's in such bad shape, just technically speaking, Catherine, then he shouldn't even be walking around like that. Like,
no.
If he still needs to go back to the back to tanker, that's something he does on a regular basis. He shouldn't be kind of moving around as if he's in perfect health, but maybe he felt he had to, I guess. Maybe there are rumors about his health or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
that just was not smart at all on Boba Fett's part. I don't get it. It's like, no. It's like, isn't this show called The Book of Boba Fett? Like the most badass bounty hunter in the galaxy, an intelligent guy, not, oh yeah, I'm just going to fall. No. Yeah, I didn't like that.
To be honest with you, Catherine, I thought when he was going to the cantina, he was going to go there and, kind of like partake of the pleasures in the cantina. It's the Sanctuary. Jennifer Beals plays Garsa Fwip. And I got the impression that maybe she's in charge in that sector, let's say, of the cantina, or, her services, their services that they offer, which was a lot. Like, she was like, do you want this? Would you like this? And I thought for sure we would see Boba Fett with like, just whatever it is that they offer there, healing, whatever. But I was odd to see him not kind of do anything in there, because I feel like, surely this man must have some desires that he, wants to have even a massage. I mean, I don't think that's so far-fetched. You know what I mean? Like, he just got out of the back tank. Maybe his back is hurting him. I don't know a man over the age of 45 who doesn't complain about back pain, or is lucky enough to not have back pain or something. So I'm wondering, like, what's going on with this? And so even the Twi'lek seems surprised that he didn't want anything. So, perhaps this is just the normal refuge of going into the sanctuary and, just kind of like relaxing. It's a relaxing spa experience, even for some. But it was nice that they showed you, we got a brief view of the Sanctuary Cantina, and it looks nice in there. It looks nice, so it's very welcoming. And you were right about, what bothered me about the scene where they were outside and got attacked was that it took a while for the Gomorian guards to show up.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't think because at first I thought they just didn't show up because Boba was that gullible, but once they finally did, I'm like, wait, where have you guys been? It's like, why didn't you sound the alarm? If you're supposed to be like, keeping watch outside,
And then, of course, as soon as they showed up, things, immediately improved for them. Those Gomorian guards are tough.
Yeah, they said they were from Jabba's, but they weren't like the big, morbidly obese ones that Luke kills in Return of the Jedi. These were like more like the ones you saw fighting in the boxing ring in The Mandalorian season 2. They're like the more fit agile fighter types. That's like, okay, so that you can see how they're going to be very helpful in that type of situation. So I don't know where they were, what they were doing.
Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, I thought they had his back, and they seemed to be with him when he got to the cantina, but they conveniently were not there when they were surrounded by these attackers. And so, as you said, they had to rush Boba Fett back to the Bacta tank. And I'm like, wow, he has to go back so soon. There's a little bit more about his condition, I guess, that will be revealed. But of course, once we see him in the Bacta tank, we get those flashbacks because he's dreaming or whatever it is you do in a Bacta tank, you dream, you go to sleep. So, we see Boba back with the Tusken Raiders, and there's a little Tusken Raider, like a child Tusken Raider, who kind of, like Boba breaks free. There's a scene where he breaks free and then he gets recaptured, but this kid wants to take Boba somewhere. And I thought this was pretty interesting.
Well, there was also a bunch of other little kids that are beating him with sticks.
Yes. Yeah. They're like abusing Boba, and he's kind of taking it, and he has no choice. Of course, it's tied up, but, the part where, it seems like the child kind of takes him, around, and he and the Rodian around, and they kind of like end up digging and doing stuff eventually. But there's a scene where the Tusken Raider child brings Boba and the Rodian kind of like on a bluff where they can peer out, and as they're peering out, they see a farmer.
This whole thing is also a little weird. Like, the idea that I don't know if this is like a ritual or something where they're going to let a child take the two prisoners all the way across. It seems like they went a really long way. And it's like, this is a little odd, So that I was trying to figure that one out. I couldn't figure that one out.
Well, I'm guessing that what we're seeing, these flashbacks, are his interpretation of what happened. And perhaps everything is not fully filled in. Sometimes with these dream sequences don't have a complete, like full, beginning to end story, but kind of focuses on some highlights of what's happened. And it seemed like they wanted, I don't know why this child, I guess maybe they just happened to see this person who has their farm or home being raided by these bad guys.
Their job as tax collectors. That's the symbol that they put on the house, that they paint on the side of the homestead. So I'm not sure if they realize that Jabba's dead or they just don't care. And there's okay.
And I have to wonder whether or not the Tuskens are subjected to that. Are they subjected to paying taxes? Or is it something that?
So I mean, they don't really have anything to pay because they don't deal with money. They're just, in a sense, like Jawas. They're scavengers. And they're just kind of nomads who just live off the land. Whereas the homesteaders, they make money off of like you see the moisture evaporators there and stuff. So they have money that the tax collectors could steal. And you actually see some of them also in the new Star Wars comics and the Journal of Obi-Wan Kenobi, where sees like the Lars homestead would even fall victim to attacks by, Jabba's thuggish tax collectors. People and they do things like that. But in this case, I guess because Jabba's gone, they're just, oh yeah, we're just gonna kill these people and just take off. And it didn't even look like they really took much of anything.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the Tusken Raiders are not that happy with the fact that these homesteaders are using these moisture collectors to steal. They're not happy with this.
Right.
So I didn't really know what to make of this scene. I wasn't sure if, he was we just happened to see this and there was some importance to these particular guys. Maybe, they've seen these guys come out, far out in the desert in the past and, they want to stop them. I'm not quite sure what the point of the scene was, but we did see that. And then after we see that point, that's when we see Jabba and the Rodian digging for, these cups or these shells that have water in them.
Boba,
yeah. I'm sorry. I keep saying Jabba. Why am I saying that? We see Boba Fett and the Rodian digging in the sand for these, and they seem pretty easy to get them out.
That's another thing which really threw me. I'm like, wait, time out. It's like you have moisture evaporators, which is the idea is that they're collecting the little bit of moisture in the air and converting it to water. And yet, and because of the attack, you saw that one of the water spigots is spewing water right there. There's probably plenty of canteens and stuff inside the homestead they could use to collect this water. And yet he's like, no, dig this hole. And the one Rodian just keeps orb after. Where are these orbs coming from? They're not even that deep in the sand. It's like, which makes me wonder if you might be onto something, that this is just Boba's interpretation of the events, because this is obviously a brand new piece of lore that there's just magic orbs with water that are just kind of there practically at surface level. I'm like, what?
It really is. And, and they're kind of digging and it's not that it feels pointless, but it almost feels like a pointless venture. It's like they're digging and it's like kind of like digging in a rock field. You just get out.
Even Boba asked Rodian at some point, he's like, hey, we should kill this kid and get out of here. I can get you to Anchorhead and we can get out of here. It's like, okay, now Boba's starting to make some sense.
Mm-hmm. But and the Rodian is completely uncooperative, which I don't know if that's in their nature or that he's just scared. And, then they come across this creature and I can't remember what it's, like people have talked about what is it and how much this creature that's in the sand that the Rodian uncovers, does kind of have a Harryhausen kind of, feel to it in look. And it does. It feels it felt like claymation. I have no idea how they made this creature, but he did have that feeling. And it did feel like we'd seen this creature before, which is fine.
It looked to me like a slightly cheaper CGI. I mean, and it's like they're trying to animate it almost to move a bit like a Harryhausen monster, but that doesn't feel Star Wars to me. Like one of my friends said, it felt like the guy wandered off the set of Jason and the Argonauts and ended up here. It's like it was a little odd and like, wait, so this thing just sleeps in the sand face down and he doesn't, and yet he has nostrils and he breathes, but he just sleeps in the sand. It's like, okay. And they just fight this monster for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a lost cause. Like that Rodian doesn't stand a chance against him. But I thought if Boba Fett had his armor, clearly he could make quick work of this beast. But he gets lucky because the monster goes after the Rodian first, and then Boba's able to kind of like use a chain, which is a homage to like another.
The Mastiff also jumps and grabs tries to engorge one of the creature's arms all at once, and then it even kills the Mastiff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and the young Tusken Raider kid is watching all this, like, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do? He's totally dumbfounded. He doesn't know what to do. He's just a kid. And of course, Boba, was very take charge. Boba was not scared. And that's something that I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about, in the sense of we've seen a few times where Mandalorians, of course, Boba didn't have his armor on, but let's say I am saying that he's a Mandalorian style type of fighter. Let's say if he doesn't choose to follow the code, it looks like when you look at him in his armor and his kind of the way that he decides to run his life, it feels very Mandalorian to me, even though he may not define himself as a Mandalorian. This isn't the first time we've seen a Mandalorian at a point where it looks like things are just going to go bad. Like when Din Djarin, and it's true he got help from Grogu, but before he got help from Grogu, when that Mudhorn was beating the crap out of him. This was going to be like the last run. This Mudhorn was going to kill him, and he pulls out his vibroblade, and I'm thinking to myself, that vibroblade isn't going to do shit, you know, like this Mudhorn's going to crush him. But he stood there like this, like with the thing in his hand, and I'm like, it's just this incredible attitude that they have towards survival, and it's like, that's what's so interesting to me about Boba, is that even in this scene where he didn't have his armor or anything, you know, he was determined to win this, and he truly believed that he was going to kill this creature. I mean, what were your thoughts about him just being able to overcome this particular situation with this gigantic creature with just a chain?
Yeah, because once the creature killed the Rhodey and the Mastiff, it's the scales have tipped in Boba's favor, because he needs to get out of here. And the kid's obviously not going to be a problem. So, okay, now we have this monster, and it's busy eating the Mastiff, and the kid is like trying to jab the thing with its foot, and even saves the kid at one point. So he just, you know, jumps on the creature's back and starts wrapping the chain around it and starts throttling it, kind of like the whole Hut Slayer Leia move.
Yes,
and just
yes, definitely
does literally the same thing while pressing hard into the creature's neck while pulling on that chain, and just kills it. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Hut Slayer Boba.
Well, it's certainly more of like what we would expect from him, and that no fear attitude, especially at the heat of the moment. I mean, that was certainly the heat of the moment. It was now or never, or else that thing was going to rip him apart. And he was like, screw that. I'm going to take charge here. You know, so you know, the child Tusken Raider and Boba Fett, you know, go back to the camp. And you're right, it does seem like it might be an entire day for them to get back.
Yeah, this is another part which lost me. I'm like, okay, Boba, you literally were just telling the Rodian we could get to Anchorhead. We can get out of here. The Rodian and the Mastiff are dead. He doesn't even need to kill the kid. You can just get the kid out of the way, go literally right over that ridge. You have free-flowing water. There's probably plenty of canteens to stock it, plenty of food and supplies in that homestead, probably their own little swoop bike or whatever, and you're gone. You're out of there. Why are you running the risk of going back to the camp where they just beat you with sticks, and you're just going to hope that they're appreciative, or that they, I mean, I didn't understand this logic here, especially since, you know, like you said, he's injured and he probably does need to get into a bacta tank, which the Tuskens clearly don't have. And it's like, why are you going back? So that's another thing that I thought was a bit out of character, and like, no, but he does go back with the kid.
Yeah, and also the other thing I was going to say that's kind of interesting about this is that, and then, you know, it's not that we're supposed to assume anything. I mean, clearly they view Boba differently now that this event has happened, but you know,
oh yeah, this is a really funny scene too, because the kid comes back with the head and he's all shouting, and you can tell from the reaction from the adults, they're like, what did you do? They can recognize the creature, that this is a big deal, but they're all looking and wondering what's going on. And I love how the clan leader, who's originally very callous towards Boba Fett, he's just standing there looking at the kid. Now everybody's cheering him, and like, yeah, he knows the kid didn't do this, and so he just hands over the orb of water.
It wasn't just me who thought that, because I thought this kid is going to brag and say that he killed this monster.
Oh yeah, you know, that's probably exactly what the kid is saying. Like he went off on a little fun adventure. Look, Mom, look, Dad, look what I did. I had fun. We got to kill the monster. And the clan leader's like, yeah, no. And you're like, here, you can have some water. You did good today. that was pretty funny.
Yeah. And I have a feeling, and you know, this is, like I said, this is his flashback, so this isn't the full story of everything that happened. Just like a small scene of what happened, but it probably took a lot more than just that for him to gain the Tusken Raiders' trust, because, you know, at least in my opinion, I have a feeling that it took a lot more. And the only reason why I think it might take a lot more is because the Tusken Raiders, although they you know, tend to stay towards the desert areas, I have a feeling they know everything that's going on the planet. In other words, even though they stay away from what I see to be like the main cities, I think they do get intel from people or try and find out what's going on their planet.
They probably also communicate with the other Tusken tribes as well.
Yeah,
like in passing or whatever.
So they know who this guy is. At least I suspect that they might say, "Oh, he's a bounty hunter." And
I don't know if they would, because if Boba wasn't really in the habit, I mean, granted, he wasn't like Din Djarin, who never took his helmet off, but if Boba wasn't really in the habit of, like, even we saw him at Jabba's palace, he'd always be in the armor everywhere. They might not know that, because, I mean, it'd be one thing if they had found him still in the armor, but since they don't, I'm not sure if they know who he is. Because it's just like, because if they did, it seemed like they would, if they cared about, ooh, this guy could help us, and they're kind of just treating him like a regular guy. He's just like, I'm not sure if they get it yet. And I mean, they might figure it out as time goes on. We'll see. But I do like the implication again that this whole series is going to be following both of those storylines. And I do hope that the second episode picks up a bit, because I admit I was actually pretty disappointed with this as a pilot, because I couldn't help but think about the pilot of The Mandalorian and how that opening scene when he goes into the bar, how wicked that is, and then he's part of a bounty hunter guild. You have this awesome Grief Karga character, but there's an off the books job he has to take, and you have the client who's really mysterious, and then you get the surprise of the Ugnaught, Kuil. I'm like, this is so cool, and then you get to see what you've wanted to see for years, which is an IG droid in combat. It's like, oh man, and then the surprise of the child at the end. It's like, man, boom, boom, boom. So many things to hook you in right from the start. Whereas this, I didn't really feel there was much of a hook. It's like Boba being an idiot in Mos Espa, and Boba kind of missing his chances to escape from the Tusken, just kind of there. And I'm like, So I hope it kind of picks up next week.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on this, Catherine. There definitely wasn't that hook that's going to make me want to watch episode 2 if I wasn't already so heavily involved in the Star Wars universe. Yeah. In particular, something that I think would have been interesting that they could have done is that, I mean, after all, we all go to sleep. We all have dreams when we sleep, and we all dream about different things that happened, and sometimes those dreams aren't anything we want to even revisit, but often it can be regrets or different things that happened that you didn't like, right? Like, why not have something like that in Boba's dream? I wanted to see something where Boba, is in the back of the tank. He closes his eyes, and we witness something that's so shocking that we're all like, "Oh my God, what the hell happened? What is that?" Something like that, where we're like, "I've got to watch episode 2 to find out what the hell is going on." Yeah. Or even, as I had discussed with another friend before, they could have said something like. Or he could have said, I just have to make sure that this, whatever happened the last time doesn't happen again. And we'd be like, well, what happened the last time? It could even have been a verbal cue if it wasn't a dream. But I really like the idea of a dream, because those dreams, like I said, they're unfiltered. So we could see something so horrific, so shocking from Boba Fett, who's spanned the galaxy, seen everything, done everything, that even, us as viewers would be just so taken back by what we saw. Like, how could this man even, live with himself if it was something bad or something salacious or something just so outrageous that he was involved in? And, he might be the person who pushed it over the edge. So, or he's trying to right some kind of wrong that he's done, something like that. Because I don't know if you feel the same way, but I truly don't even know his motivation at this point, in addition to the fact that we didn't get the hook. So, in addition to not getting a hook to want to watch it for episode 2, I still don't know what is motivating Boba to do this. Like, I feel like we should have been told something that lets us know that's why he's doing that. But in addition to that, have something really bad too, that is off in the wings that might come back to haunt him somehow, So, it's very interesting, to see that. And I think that they could have done that if they had made this episode longer, maybe an hour and 20 minutes.
I didn't really feel like it was that short. I thought the flashbacks in particular were a lot slower paced, so it felt longer than it actually was for me. It's just that the quasi cliffhanger, if you will, with Fennec Shand seemed a bit incomplete, because it's like, okay, if you're going to end the episode on a cliffhanger, then make that a more cliffhanger, but it doesn't, because after she catches the guy on the roof, we go to the whole back to tank thing again. So it feels like there's that lingering story is still kind of going, and I would wonder if going forward, if he will start listening to Fennec Shand a lot more, because she clearly knows what's up. Yeah, and maybe we'll find out why they were going to rendezvous on Tatooine in the first place. Like, how do they know each other, and what was their business originally,
Yeah, she clearly knows a lot, and they don't seem like people who just met yesterday. They seem very comfortable with one another. They've probably worked together in the past before all this, and they clearly have some. I'm not going to say skeletons in the closet, but let's just say that they've done some serious jobs that have binded them somehow to a point where they're like, well, what do we do now that we can't do bounty hunting as much? Like, what do we do with the rest of our lives? Maybe the bounty hunting part isn't going to be our future. All right, let's do a job change. Let's switch jobs. Let's go into something else. But there has to be something that's drawn them to this particular place for a particular reason, I think, or not just well, yeah, we need something to do now. We're just going to take over, that the underworld. Like, I'm like, no, there's got to be some other reason why they're doing this. So
yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And who knows, maybe that's whatever it is their end game is, might be why they're originally meeting there to begin with. But you're right, deciding that, hey, let's randomly just try and do this and start this big crime. It's like, yeah, that's not something you just randomly decide to do on a whim.
Yeah. So I did want to say that overall, other than that Harryhausen creature, I thought that the episode looked beautiful. It's up to the level of quality that we were expecting. And the music, they have the same guy from The Mandalorian who did the music. And you could even hear I wasn't sure if Boba has a theme, but you could hear like the Haka sound in part of the episode. And that sounded so cool at the end where it was like, like they just really made that really kind of enhanced it for me. So what do you think the next episode may be bringing for us, Catherine?
I think we're going to have another confrontation an actual confrontation with the mayor of Mos Espa. And we're going to see Boba Fett probably become more accepted and integrated into that particular Tusken tribe. Because when we saw him in Chapter 5, he did have the traditional Tusken robes with the big gaffy stick. And so I think that'll be the progression of episode 2. And however the meeting with the mayor is going to go down, I think is going to garner Boba the respect to get that scene we see in the trailers where he's hosting like all the different crime lords at the table. So I think that's kind of where we're going next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that dinner where everybody's around and like trying to say, well, what cut do I get? And kind of like, what do you mean you're ruling with respect? These sort of contradictions, crime lord that rules with respect. And I've even heard people say that, they weren't sure if, since he's a crime lord, is this a Godfather-esque version? Is this like
I think that's what he means when he says rule with respect. Like, on the whole honor among thieves thing, where you're going to honor your own code. You're not going to backstab the people you make deals with, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And so, hopefully we will see a little bit more of that. The other thing I was going to say is they made a point, and this is actually my last point. They made a point of singling out the Twi'leks, so to speak. And, I know that in the history, they've been enslaved and had different things. And supposedly, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not enslaved anymore in that way. Like they have their own business enterprises and interests in the underworld. What do you think that they are going to play a pivotal role in this series?
Hard to say, because I don't recall seeing any of the Twi'leks heavily featured in the marketing or anything at all. It's like, yeah, we know Jabba had some Twi'lek slaves. We saw the Twi'lek major domo, and then the Twi'lek who runs the cantina. So far, that's kind of it. So maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I have to say, we are waiting for the next episode. It's going to be in a few days. Thank you so much for joining me in doing this review of the Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 1. Where can people find you, Catherine?
Find me every second and fourth Sunday of the month at the Virtual Canteen Network YouTube channel at 8 a.m. Pacific, hosting The Unifying Force, which is a Star Wars talk show. We return next Sunday at 8 a.m. And you can find me every Wednesday night at the Phantasmagorium Show YouTube channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, hosting Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns, a James Bond podcast with Scotty R37, and we have a lot of fun.
Excellent. And guys, you always can find me here on Positive Fandom on YouTube, and you can also find me, it's two separate words, Positive Fandom on YouTube, and you can also find me on Twitch, Positive Fandom, one word. You can also find me on the Burr Network on Midnight Metal on Friday nights at 3 a.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And when the hiatus is over, I think it's going to be this Monday, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's usually Monday nights at 8 p.m. on Toxic Femininity with Lorena Creole. every other Thursday or every Thursday on Uncivilized Scoundrels on the 6 Scale Man Network, and on Midnight's Edge in the morning at 12 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. You can find me there as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be continuing our reviews of the Book of Boba Fett episodes for season 1 as they continue to be released. Hope you all are well. And if you enjoyed this video, check out some of the other videos on the channel. Thanks so much for watching. And remember to always be kind.